What does a forgotten mass graveyard from the Cook County Insane Asylum have to do with a ruthless, wife-murdering serial killer that I bet you've never heard of? Welcome to Saranormal Activity. I'm Sarah, and this is normal for me. Catherine Kimberly was having a really strange week. It was 1905, and she was a landlady to a New York City boarding house. And a suave man named Henry Bartles came to her door and asked to rent one of her rooms. Even after they had agreed on a price, he started asking about more things that he could do for her. Clean the bedrooms, sweep the floors, peel potatoes. Catherine was a peel her own potatoes kind of gal. And this was getting really weird. He wouldn't stop talking to her, you know? He was hovering a little too much. He was a little too interested, asking a few too many questions. And the next day, he proposed. No. No, thank you. All of this was making her reconsider whether or not she wanted this man in her house. I mean, who was this guy? And then Catherine had a bone-chilling realization. She dropped what she was doing and ran straight to the police. He was born John Schmidt, and he would be known by too many names to count. But the world would know him as Johann Hoch, a slippery man. He told strangers that he was born in Germany, immigrated to the US, and his dream was to open a German-themed saloon. Quaint. But this man had a Kardashian-sized closet full of skeletons. Yes, he was born in Germany, but what he didn't say is he grew up working in chemist shops, giving him an intimate understanding of pharmaceuticals and poisons. Certainly couldn't be important. There was talk that he had a wife and kids in Germany, but that he left them in the dead of night to come to the US. No one could put together why. Once he arrived in the US, he went straight for Wheeling, West Virginia, and finally fulfilled his dream of opening that German-themed bar under the name Jacob Huff. And that's where he met Reverend Herman Haas. We love the Reverend. Reverend Haas cared deeply for his community and its safety, especially the group of lonely German widows that was in his congregation. He kept a special eye out for those widows, which is why he was the first one to notice that Huff was spending a little too much time with them, and with one in particular, Caroline Hoch. So Huff arrived to Wheeling in February 1895. By April, he was married to Caroline, and by June, she was on her deathbed. Sure, Huff played the part of the doting, oh so worried husband very well, but Reverend Haas was not tricked. He saw right through it and suspected Huff of doing something unspeakably evil, especially since when he went to visit Caroline at her bedside, out of the corner of his eye, he swore that he saw Huff forcibly giving Caroline a white powder. Panicked, the Reverend immediately left to find a doctor that could prove she was being poisoned. But once the Reverend and the doctor returned, Huff didn't let them or anyone else in to see Caroline, saying the physician he was speaking to was taking care of it and Caroline was doing much better. That morning, Caroline was dead. The Reverend was enraged at Huff for obviously having a hand in her death, and at himself for not acting quick enough. He searched the entire town looking for Huff and found him at a barbershop, whereupon Huff immediately burst into tears, talking about how terribly devastated he was about his wife, which is strange because his wife's body was alone at his house while he was at the barbershop getting a shave. And he wasn't so devastated that he couldn't cash in on her life insurance, drain her savings, and sell her house before Caroline was even in the ground, which, he insisted, be done very quickly. Reverend Haas became an armchair detective and was desperate to figure out what happened to Caroline. He found out that Huff's bar was in financial trouble, which conveniently was taken care of by Caroline's money. Haas went from pharmacy to see if he could recognize the white powder that he was sure Huff was feeding her. He sent a photo of Huff to the mayor of the German town that Huff said he grew up in to see if he could get any information about his background. And he even snuck into Huff's house, but he couldn't find any trace of the powder. Huff returned the favor. One night, the Reverend and his wife heard some suspicious noises in their bedroom. They ran upstairs, and there was Huff, sputtering some pathetic excuse about needing to talk to Haas right away. But before the Reverend could grill him, he slipped back out the window and into the night. The next day, Huff's belongings, including his clothes, his hat, a very expensive silver pocket watch, and a note, were found next to the Ohio River. Reverend Haas would never see him again, at least until he was known as Johann Hoch.